In this video, I will talk about the concept of rounding. So we'll start with discussing place value, then understanding the multiples of 10 and 100, and then finally we will go over 3 rounding strategies. So first, just the quick concept of place value. Like I talked about in the place value blocks, the base 10 blocks video, we have ones, tens, and hundreds, and that's really what we focus on for rounding in second grade. So students will be expected to round to the nearest 10 and to the nearest 100. So here is a quick visual of each place value. And then, of course, it gets expanded out as students learn more about place value and get older. They go out to the millions place by fourth grade. Multiples of 10 are extremely important for an understanding of rounding. So students need to understand counting by tens indefinitely. So they start with 10, 20, 30, 40, but then they should also understand that 110, 120, 130, 1010, 1020, or 1210, etc. Those are all multiples of 10, and the same goes for hundreds. So when we're rounding, a lot of times I will say, what two tens is the number in between? What two 100s is the number in between if we're rounding to 100? So I will talk about that when I talk about the number line strategy. So here are 3 main strategies. The first one is using a rhyme that I will discuss in the next slide. So the 5 or more strategy. The next one is using midpoints, and then the last one is using a vertical number line. So all 3 strategies work well, but number 2 and number 3 tend to make more sense and be used more consistently by the students that I teach. So the 5 or more strategy, you use this rhyme. 5 or more, raise the score or give it some more. 4 or less, give it a rest. So here we have rounding 16 to the nearest 10, and they're looking at that 6. Since the 6 is 5 or more, then they're going to be rounding up to 20. So this works for some students. The issue with this strategy is it can lead to a lot of errors, and the students may not understand why we're rounding up if it's 5 or more, or why we're rounding down. So I tend to stay away from this strategy here. So the common issues, this is extremely common. I see this a lot. If I'm asking a student to round, okay, 1,678 to the nearest 10, the student might say, well, 8 is greater than 5, it's 5 or more, so I'm going to round up and change the 7 to an 8. But then they leave the other 8 behind. They don't change the rest of the numbers behind that target number to zeros. So it could be the same if they're rounding this same number to the nearest 100. They might say, okay, 7 is 5 or more, so I'm going to change the 6 to a 7, and then my answer will be 1,778. So they're just basically adding 10 or adding 100 to the number and not changing the rest to 0, which indicates that they don't really understand how rounding works or what they're doing. Using a midpoint and a vertical number line is leads to more success for many of the students. So for example, a student might be looking at 16 here on the number line, and they might know that 15 is that midpoint in between 10 and 20. So they have a good understanding of how 5s relate to 10. So if students have this good understanding of a midpoint, then they're kind of dividing the number line into 2 halves. One, the top half is going to round up to that top number, the bottom half is going to round down to that bottom number. So the only caveat with this strategy is remembering that the convention is to round numbers that end in 5 up. So they're not, they can't just say that 15 would round to 15 to the nearest 10 because 15 is not a 10. So that can be the only common error that I see with this strategy. Otherwise, the strategy tends to be pretty successful if they do remember that convention. Another strategy that students use is just using the vertical number line without kind of thinking about the midpoint. They use what I like to call jumps. They look at 16 and they look at these 4 jumps and they say, okay, it's 4 away from 20, but it's 6 away from 10. So it's definitely closer to 20. So this strategy tends to work the best for students, and using a vertical number line is key here instead of a horizontal number line, because when we use language like we're rounding up or rounding down, the vertical number line is actually showing that direction. So if I'm saying I'm rounding up and I'm using a horizontal number line and up actually means to the right, that can get very confusing for students and they can start to make mistakes. So using the vertical number line kind of keeps all of the language consistent for them. So let's look at some common issues that I see with the number line strategy. So when students start to use this strategy, they are given a blank number line and they're expected to fill that number line in with the correct numbers. So figuring out what numbers go on the number line can be a big challenge for some students, especially when you have tens or hundreds that are greater than 100 for tens or 1,000 for hundreds. So here are some examples of such numbers. Now, when I'm trying to get students to write the correct numbers onto their vertical number line, I might say, what 2 tens is this number in between? If we're looking at 1,137, I might say, what 2 tens is that in between? If they are giving me the correct answer, like 1,130 and 1,140, then I will ask them this question. If we count between those numbers, will we get to 1,137? They will say yes. If they're not able to supply those numbers, sometimes I cover up all of the digits except that tens and ones place. So I might say, let's just look at just 37. So if we're just talking about 37, what 2 tens would that be in between? And then I can help them to generalize that to talking about numbers that are greater than 1,000. So here is a common error. Okay, so students might say, oh, it's in between 1,140 and 1,150 because they know those are 2 tens and they're not really thinking, is this number in between those 2 numbers? So I'm always a proponent of experience is the best teacher. So if a student gives me the wrong answer, I will still write it up and I'll say, do we see 1,137 on this number line? Of course, they will say no. So then you can prompt them to try to adjust their answer. So then they'll figure it out, we'll write it, and then we'll find the number and use whatever strategy works for them, whether that is midpoint in this situation or just using those number of jumps.